This morning in Washington, the Senate will meet to try to come up with a budget plan and a deal that could involve raising the debt ceiling.
Now, Democrats say that some tax increases need to be included with proposed cuts, but Republicans say no deal will include any tax hikes. Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson now joins us live on the phone to talk more about the upcoming budget talks. And Senator Johnson, thanks so much for joining us. Any idea of what could happen today?
Well, good morning, Susan. Thanks for having me on. Well, the first thing we need to dispatch is the whole debate on the Libyan resolution, which I objected to on Thursday, and hopefully we can defeat cloture on there so we can actually start discussing what we need to do to prevent America from going bankrupt. And I stood up on the Senate floor on Tuesday saying that unless the Senate Democrats get serious about addressing this issue, I was going to begin to object. I was going to begin to withhold my consent, and I've started doing that until they get serious about this issue.
You know, what struck me as interesting about that, Senator, is both you and then Senator Barack Obama have expressed in your early days in the Senate a frustration at the pace of how things moved. I just struck that as interesting since on this particular issue, obviously, you're opposed in philosophy.
Well, if you take a look at what the Senate hasn't accomplished this year, I mean, by law, the Senate should have passed a budget by April 15th. It's missed that deadline 2 years in a row. The Senate hasn't passed a budget in over 2 years. All the appropriation bills should have been passed by June 10th. Not one has been passed. So, really, the Senate is guilty of willful neglect. I mean, it's fiddling while America goes bankrupt, and that's simply unacceptable. We have got to turn our attention to the fact that our spending is out of control here in Washington. And, business as usual is just continuing here, and that's what I'm trying to stop. I'm trying to stop business as usual and make people actually start addressing the problem.
Now, Senator Johnson, you came in as a novice in the political spectrum. Just curious, as you've been in there for 6 months now, trying to get this monumental change, and you talk about business not getting done. Are you frustrated by the pace of the lack of effort, especially on this issue of trying to essentially turn the tide?
I've watched Washington for quite some time. I knew how broken it is, and it is broken. So that doesn't surprise me. What is incredibly disappointing is the total lack of leadership from this president on this issue. I mean, let's face it, there's only one person out of 307 million Americans that can actually sign a bill into law. And really until last week, President Obama wasn't even involved in the talks directly. He was sending out Vice President Biden to participate in kind of sporadic negotiations. He simply hasn't been serious about that. Let's face it, he sent over a budget. His budget proposal lost in the Senate 0 to 97. Not even one single Democrat senator thought it was a serious enough effort to give it a vote. So, no, I'm incredibly disappointed. I'm saddened by the fact that this president refuses to lead. And we need leadership. America hungers for leadership on this issue.
Senator, they're telling me we're already out of time, but I do need to follow up on that because the president has argued that, listen, we have budged, we have come and met at least part way with what the Republicans are asking for. They simply won't budge on increasing taxes on the richest Americans. Is there a chance that anyone in your party will budge on that?
Well, first of all, let's see the plan. I mean, all these things are kind of secret little negotiations behind closed doors. Let's get them out in the light of day. Let's debate these in the United States Senate. That would be my first point. Secondly, I've always said we need increased revenues. But we need to increase revenues the old-fashioned way by growing our economy. Republicans are all for dramatic tax reform to get rid of loopholes and special deals that are truly that, but not legitimate business expenses. And an awful lot of the things that the Democrats attack are legitimate business expenses that would actually, for example, increase the cost of exploration of oil, which would actually increase the cost of gasoline. That's going to harm our economy. That's going to harm average, everyday working Americans. So, we just simply don't want to do anything that would harm economic growth. I think we're very practical. We're very realistic from that standpoint.
Senator Ron Johnson joining us live from Washington today. Senator, we appreciate your time. We'll be watching.
Well, great. Have a good day.
You too, Senator. Thank you.